Hey, welcome back to my channel Iraqi News Update Tep, the Iraqi Dinars IQD and Vietnamese Dong VND, their currency revaluations RV potential. Out hedge forex rate implications in 2025 Iraqi Dinar and Vietnamese Dong currency revaluation and forex rate analysis 2025. Introduction to concepts of currency revaluation RV and foreign exchange forex rates have become hot topics among investors eyeing currencies like the Iraqi Dinars IQD and the Vietnamese Dong VND. These currencies are often considered undervalued and are believed by some to be poised for a sudden increase in value, a revaluation. However, the reality is far more complex, involving deep geopolitical, economic, and structural issues. This analysis will break down the economic context of Iraq and Vietnam, history and status of the IQD and VND, what currency revaluation actually means, how forex rates are determined, factors affecting revaluation potential, the current outlook for IQD and VND's AF 2025-1. Understanding currency revaluations RV. What is a currency revaluation? A currency revaluation occurs when a country's central bank or monetary authority increases the official value of its currency relative to a reference currency, usually the USD, or a basket of major currencies. This typically happens in fixed or managed exchange rate systems, not free floating ones. Revaluation is not the same as a market-driven increase in value. For example, CBI officially changes the value of IQD from 1,300 to 500 per USD. That is a revaluation. If demand for IQD rises in the open market and the value climbs naturally, that's an appreciation, not a revaluation. Revaluation vs. Redenomination. It's important to distinguish between a revaluation and a redenomination. Revaluation increases the actual value. Redenomination merely shifts decimal places, e.g., removing 3 zeros without changing the value of purchasing power. 2. The Iraqi Dinars IQD, a historical background. The IQD has had a turbulent history, heavily influenced by 1990s 2003 US invasion and regime change, hyperinflation and economic collapse, reconstruction under the new government and the CBI in the early 2000s. The Central Bank of Iraq CBI issued new banknotes and began stabilizing the exchange rate, aiming to reduce inflation and encourage foreign investment. As of mid-2025, the IQD trades around 1,320, 1,360 per USD. It operates under a managed float system, not a fixed peg. Recent developments: CBI reform initiatives to de-dollarize the economy, introduction of national card payment systems, Iraq increasing efforts to gain international financial transparency, lots of moving toward WTO integration and building non-oil revenue streams. However, the economy remains fragile. 95% of revenues still come from oil. Corruption, lack of industrial diversification, and political instability remain serious concerns. 3. The Vietnamese Dong VND economic background. Unlike Iraq, Vietnam has seen sustained economic growth, averaging 6-7% GDP growth annually for the past 2 decades. However, the VND has historically been heavily devalued due to high inflation in the 1980s and 90s, a tightly controlled, driven monetary policy, desire to keep the currency cheap for global competitiveness. Current exchange rate 2025 as of 2025. With 125, 300 per USD, the VND is also under a managed peg to a USD-centered currency basket. Vietnam controls the exchange rate tightly through its central bank. SBV economic position 2025. Vietnam has a diversified economy: tech, manufacturing, textiles, agriculture, services, large FDI inflows, particularly from China upon shifts, rising middle class and domestic consumption. Challenges include currency controls and limited convertibility, high public debt, and banking sector opacity, vulnerability to US labeling it a currency manipulator. 4. How forex rates are determined. The value of a currency in the forex market depends on several factors. 1. Interest rates. 2. Inflation. 3. Trade balance, exports vs imports. 4. Foreign reserves. 5. Political stability. 6. Central bank policy. 7. Speculative demand. Currencies like the IQD and VND are not fully traded on the open forex market like the USD, EUR, or JPY. They are subject to exchange restrictions, capital controls, and non-convertibility, which means you cannot freely trade them on platforms like Forex.com or OND. They are often exchanged only within national banking systems or via authorized dealers. 5. Or VND revalue significantly. The case for Iraqi Dinar IQD RV. Speculative arguments. RV supporters. Iraq has one of the largest oil reserves in the world. Potential post-conflict economic boom. The belief that Iraq will return to a 1 IQD $3 rates as in the 1980s. Talk of moving to gold-backed currency or new oil trade deals. Reality check. The high exchange rate in the 1980s was artificially pegged during a centralized economy. Iraq's current GDP, reserves, and fiscal strength do not support a drastic RV. A massive revaluation would increase the money supply cost astronomically, collapse export competitiveness, trigger inflation and bank failures. Most likely scenario: gradual appreciation. Not a sudden RV. Iraq will likely replace old notes with a redenomination plan. The IQD may strengthen slightly as Iraq diversifies its economy and integrates more with international financial systems. The case for Vietnamese dong VN dinar v speculative argument. Vietnam's economy is strong and growing, currency undervalued due to manipulation. Potential IMF supported currency reform. Belief that VND will gain significantly vs. USD in a free set. Vietnam is deliberately keeping its currency weak to promote exports. The VND is non-convertible, meaning global investors cannot easily trade or invest in VND. A sudden revaluation would hurt Vietnam's export competitiveness, most likely scenario. Continued gradual appreciation, not a massive RV. Possible movement toward currency liberalization. Vietnam may lift capital controls eventually, allowing more open exchange. 6. Forex and revaluation myth reality. IQD will RV to 3D overnight, economically impossible without destroying Iraq's monetary system. VND will reset and rise 1000%. Vietnam would lose export leverage and FDI. A global currency reset is coming as an IMF policy for a one-time currency reset. Buying IQD VND is like buying stock. Currencies don't grow and vary the same way. They are tied to policy and economics. Holding physical dinars dong will make you rich. Many currency dealers overcharge, and revaluation is extremely unlikely. 7. 2025 update. Iraq's 2010-5 is CBI's tightening regulation. Trying to shift away dollar dependency, anti-money laundering and SCFT tracking systems are being deployed. No official announcements of any revaluation. Exchange rate remains around 1.321. 3 liquidity USD Vietnam 2225 VND remains relatively stable. 525-300 VND per USD. Inflation remains controlled. The government has not indicated any RV plans. More likely gradual liberalization, increased foreign investment, stronger VND over TIM 8. Conclusion. Both the Iraqi Dinar and the Vietnamese dong are unique currencies shaped by their country's political, economic, and historical environments. While the dream of a massive currency revaluation attracts attention, especially online, it is not grounded in economic reality. Iraq's best path forward lies in currency stability, economic reform, anti-corruption, and slow integration with international financial systems. Vietnam is likely to allow gradual appreciation of the dong as it liberalizes the economy, but not a sudden or massive RV. 9. Final advice: if you're considering investing in IQD or VND, avoid hype or insider RV rumors. Buy only through licensed dealers, not unregulated platforms. Know that these currencies are illiquid and not tradable like major currencies. Be prepared to hold long term and possibly never realize gains. Or would you like me to expand this into part 2, 3,000 and 5,000 words with more detail, the history of forex manipulation, IMF programs, Iraq's budget reforms, or VND's currency manipulation?